Tools exist to help make our jobs and our lives a little bit easier and a little bit more enjoyable to do. This is especially true for freelance writers or any other kind of entrepreneur, really. So in this video, I'm going to cover my current tech stack for freelance writing, as well as some other tools in the past that I either would recommend or wouldn't recommend. Just as a disclaimer, I will be including links to the tools that I use in the description box below. Some of them will have affiliate links, which means that if you click on them and make a purchase or upgrade to a premium version of the tool, I may get a commission or some other kind of kickback like free tool credit at no additional cost to you. As we get into the list, please remember to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell. It does a lot to support this channel. At the time of recording, this channel is very new, so anything you can do will be a huge help. Thank you very much. Let's get into it. So the first category of tools that I'm going to cover are sort of general business tools. Think your customer relationship management, project management software, accounting, you know, the works. And the first tool that I'm going to talk about is Notion. Notion is talked about a lot here on YouTube for its productivity prowess. And I've been a big Notion user for quite a few years now, since maybe 2019. And I love it because of how customizable it is. And basically, I use it as a headquarters for my business. Anything that I'm tracking within my business, it's on Notion, basically. My freelancing brand name is Sassociate, so I have a workspace in my Notion called Sassociate HQ. And within that workspace, the HQ is divided up into 4 or 5 different departments, including finance, content development, marketing, operations, etc. I find it helps to organize myself this way, to put myself in the right mind frame for attacking the tasks associated with each area of business. The next tool is actually related to Notion, and it's called Super, or super.so is the URL. It's actually a web hosting platform that works by taking the published URL of a Notion page and essentially reskinning it with some CSS and just making the Notion page look prettier and giving you the ability to have a navigation and footer area on your website, which is very useful. And I love it because it means I get to maintain and update my website very easily wherever I want because I have Notion on my phone. The next tool I'll talk about is my accountancy software. It does what it says on the tin. It's called Crunch Accounting. You might not have heard of it because it's more tailored to the UK business market, but I have used platforms like QuickBooks, Free Agent, maybe something else in the past. I turned to Crunch because I changed my business structure to a limited company, and I found that Crunch had better features and offerings for a limited company as opposed to being a sole trader. Next, I'll talk a little bit about Bonsai. Bonsai is an interesting tool. It's an all-in-one small business freelancer management platform, but essentially it works as a CRM, project management, and invoicing. And if you're a US citizen, it helps handle your tax as well. I primarily use it for generating contracts, proposals, and managing my contact forms through my website. However, at the time of recording, Notion has very recently updated the platform with the Notion Forms feature, which I will be definitely checking out. Next up, we have everyone's favorite async communications tool, Slack. I use Slack to communicate with some of my clients, not all, but primarily it's for engaging with Slack-based professional membership communities, which I will talk about towards the end of this video. And finally, in this category, we have Superhuman email. I can understand why some folks very much don't like the idea of paying a fair bit of money actually for an email service provider, which is essentially just a reskin of Gmail. However, the keyboard shortcuts, in-app prompts, and some of the unique features of Superhuman do actually make it worth it, for me at least, to pay for the software. Let's also not forget the incredible photography that comes when you hit inbox 0, like so. Let's move on to my actual work-related tools, the ones I need to get the job done, essentially. And the first one I'm going to talk about is ButterDocs. ButterDocs positions itself as a competitor to Google Docs. When they first came about, I instantly downloaded it, created an account, because for a very long time I felt that Google Docs was a subpar experience for drafting content, because you need notes all over the place, and at least at the time when I signed up, you couldn't make multiple versions of the same document without having a whole other document that takes up space in your drive. But with ButterDocs, I can have one document that houses theoretically unlimited notes. I can organize and structure the outline of my blog post drafts, as well as have each section have notes that I can see while I'm writing, while I'm drafting. But basically my workflow is that I will pop my outline into the ButterDocs file, then I will create notes, usually one for keywords, one for internal links, and another one for any SME insights I might have gathered. Then as I draft, I open each relevant note that I need to use while I'm drafting, and overall it's just a much more efficient workflow for me. But I highly recommend checking ButterDocs out if you do any kind of content writing. Next up is Google Workspace. Obviously, I just spent the last minute or so talking about a up-and-coming competitor tool, which, because it is a competitor, I still struggle to get clients to buy in to using the tool for offering feedback and making edits. So as a result, what I end up doing is I complete my first draft in ButterDocs, then I'll copy everything I've done and paste it into a Google Docs, which then serves as my platform for my first sort of round of edits. But Google Workspace is Google Workspace. Everyone kind of knows what it is, and I also use Google Drives to house images that I create for clients related to the blog posts that I write. Next up, we have Hemingway Editor, and there's been a decent debate for a couple of years between which is better, Hemingway or Grammarly. Now, a couple of years ago, I would have hands down said Grammarly. However, in the last sort of year or so, I've noticed that Grammarly's edit suggestions are off at least half of the time, or just straight up wrong. And I end up spending half the time correcting the editing suggestions it makes, which obviously disrupts my workflow. So I basically did away with Grammarly and I moved over to Hemingway Editor, mainly for the ability to check the readability score, which tells me that if the reading grade is too high, I generally have sentences that are too long, or I overuse passive voice maybe. Hemingway Editor just kind of helps me simplify writing, because sometimes I may have a habit of injecting some of my academic voice into blog posts where it has no business being there. Next up, we have a fairly new entry to my tech stack, and that is Lex Lex AI or Lex.page. Not quite sure exactly the formal name for the app, but it's essentially another Google Docs competitor. The USP of Lex is that it uses AI to run checks similarly to Grammarly and Hemingway if you use the paid version of Hemingway. The few times I've used it so far, it feels a lot more accurate. The editing suggestions are a lot more natural sounding. You can also build a custom AI prompt or model in which you can input essentially the brand or the client's brand's tone of voice guides, any feedback you've received in the past related to your writing. Then when you create the prompt, it will run a check against the criteria that you set for the AI to work with, and that's been a very interesting use case for me. And I found that it actually does help a lot with my sort of second round of editing before I give it my own human look, read aloud just to make sure everything makes sense and it sounds okay, essentially. Next up we have Canva. I've been using Canva for several years now, but basically I use it to create mock-up graphics for my clients to use within the blog posts. The graphics that I create from Canva don't always make it to the final product of the live article, and that's just the case if the brand has an in-house content design team, or they've been working already with an outsourced designer, which is cool. My mock-ups then just help guide the thought process I have behind what kind of imagery should accompany the writing within a blog post. But yeah, use Canva a lot, and it's not too expensive. And moving on to keyword research, I use Ahrefs. Ahrefs? That last one is definitely not right, but from what I gather, I think the most common pronunciation is Ahrefs. Either way, it's a keyword research platform, and I really like it for its usability. I'm a fan of the UI. Some people might find it a bit complicated, but it's just about right for me. There are a couple of key features that stand out to me for why I use Ahrefs over some other tools, and one of them is the portfolios feature, which I use to track URLs of my live bylines, and doing so helps me find high performing work that I've done in the past, which I can then use as case studies on my website or in my private portfolio to showcase to potential new clients. But obviously I also use Ahrefs to do keyword research itself for when I'm maybe onboarding a new client, and if I'm thinking about making suggestions for new content with existing clients. Another tool I use on a very regular basis is called Groove. It's an app on my phone. There is no free version, so it does require a payment up front, but it's something like $14.99 a month. And it is definitely worth it because you get to have co-working sessions that follow the sort of Pomodoro method, where you have 5 minutes of chat on one side, 50 minutes of work, and then another 5 minutes to close out. And you get paired with up to 3 other people who are looking to have a co-working session. They can be anywhere in the world. I tend to get interesting matches later in the day from folks within the US. Everyone I've met on the Groove app are really cool people working on cool stuff, and the vibes are immaculate, basically. I would highly recommend downloading and giving Groove a try if you're the kind of person who misses the human interactions you maybe used to get, or just better human interactions than maybe what you're used to in an office-based setting. And yeah, Groove is a great app to help you feel less lonely as a freelancer or solopreneur. The last tool in this category is a little platform called Brain FM or brain.fm, which is the URL. And this is a really cool music tool which helps me get into a flow state while I'm drafting my content and editing, doing all kinds of things really. The app is split into a few different modes, and I primarily use focus mode, and you can choose the type of music that you feel like gets you into the flow the most. For example, when I'm writing client content, I like to vibe along with lo-fi and electronic music. But if I'm writing academic content, I listen to classical or cinematic music. But the platform works, it has like a scientific method, like tuning to the optimal frequencies and having deep beats and things like this. I don't know exactly how it works, but it does. And it's also very cheap. I can't remember exactly what the price is at the time of recording, but I'll pop it here. I do remember it was annual based pricing for a better deal anyway. Given that I know it's very cheap, it's definitely worth it. Right, for the last section of this video, I'm going to talk about professional communities. And the first one I'll talk about is Superpath. Superpath is quite well known. It's a really big community in the content world. I think there's something like 20,000 odd people in the Slack group. Superpath itself has a free tier and a premium paid tier. The free tier is still definitely worth joining, but in the paid tier you get access to past webinars, Ask Me Anythings, templates, premium specific channels like content strategy discussions, career advice, and a few more things. Great place to be. It's very active, and you'll nearly always get answers to questions that you ask or responses to scenarios that you put forward. The second community I'll talk about is called Top of the Funnel, or ToFu. It's another really active and engaged community, and it too has a free tier and a paid tier. The paid tier is called Mofu, and this gives you access to a Mofu specific channel that's private within the Slack community for ToFu. You also get access to a really large library of resources related to freelancing, building an agency if that's the route you'd like to go, and managing clients, offering different kinds of services. There are a ton of great resources in the Mofu part of ToFu. The other great thing about Mofu is that Tyler, the guy who owns the platform community, is really attentive, and he always pops in to answer questions that people ask within the Mofu channel. He's generally speaking very engaged with the community. The next community I'll talk about is Peak Freelance, and Peak Freelance has a sort of special place in my heart because it was the first professional community that I joined as a freelancer back in 2020, and it was co-founded by Elise Dobson and Mike Keenan, who are really cool people. I have gotten to know them over the last few years. Engagement has been down for the last year or so. It's not as active as it used to be, but as a result, any questions, posts that do come through on the Peak Freelance, either in the Slack community or the Circle community that it's posted on, do tend to get quite detailed responses. Peak Freelance, place in my heart, not as active as it once was, but still really cool people there if you decide to join. The last community I'll talk about is quite a small one. There's only 100 or so people in there, and it's called the H-Spot, founded by a freelancer called Harva. Shout out to Harva. Because it's such a small community, it's really close-knit, and if an online community could feel cozy, That's how I describe the HSpot, but either way, similar as others, it's quite active and engaging. The primary reason I'd recommend joining the HSpot is for the co-working sessions that Harvard organizes on a weekly basis. And if you're the kind of person who feels like you need to see people's faces for accountability sessions, focusing and just getting shit done, then yeah, I recommend joining the HSpot. So that's what my current tech stack looks like for freelance writing. Let me know down in the comments below if you think I've missed a critical tool, or if you have better alternatives to some of the tools I've mentioned, or if there are some entirely different tools that you think I should be giving a try. But otherwise, have a great day. Ta-ta, until next time.